They said it was impossible. A myth whispered through the corridors of history for over 2,000 years. Cleopatra's legendary pleasure barge, a floating palace so magnificent that Roman historians claimed it could rival the grandest temples of Egypt, was nothing more than propaganda. They insisted. Ancient exaggeration, poetic license. But on a humid morning in September 2023, Dr. Amara Hassan stood on the deck of a research vessel in Alexandria's eastern harbor, staring at sonar images that would rewrite everything we thought we knew about the last pharaoh of Egypt. The readings were unmistakable. 200 feet below the surface, buried beneath centuries of sediment and forgotten history, lay the skeletal remains of a vessel that defied all archaeological expectations. It wasn't just large, it was colossal, nearly 400 feet long, with a beam that suggested multiple decks and a displacement that would have required hundreds of crew members. But size alone wasn't what made Dr. Hassan's hands tremble as she zoomed in on the high-resolution scans. It was the details. The intricate carving still visible after millennia underwater. The unmistakable traces of gold leaf. The layout that matched with eerie precision descriptions from ancient Roman accounts that scholars had dismissed as fantasy. This wasn't just any ancient vessel. This was Cleopatra's Thalamagos, her legendary holder of chambers, and it was about to reveal secrets that would transform our understanding of one of history's most enigmatic rulers. To understand the magnitude of this discovery, we need to step back into the world of 48 BCE, when Cleopatra VII was locked in a desperate struggle for the throne of Egypt. She was 21 years old, exiled by her own brother-husband, Ptolemy XIII, and plotting her return from the desert beyond Alexandria. Julius Caesar had just arrived in Egypt, pursuing his rival Pompey after their civil war had torn Rome apart. But Pompey was already dead, murdered on the orders of Ptolemy's advisors, who thought they could curry favor with Caesar. They were wrong. Caesar was furious at this breach of honor, and suddenly the political landscape of Egypt hung in the balance. This is where legend and history blur together. Ancient sources tell us that Cleopatra had herself smuggled into Caesar's presence. And what happened next changed the course of history. Cleopatra captivated Caesar, not with beauty alone, but with intelligence, political acuity, and something far more tangible, a demonstration of Egypt's incomparable wealth and sophistication. Within weeks, Caesar had sided with Cleopatra against her brother. Within months, she was pregnant with his child. Within a year, she was the undisputed ruler of Egypt, with Rome's military might backing her claim. But how did a 21-year-old woman accomplish this political miracle? The answer lies in how she presented herself and her kingdom. The newly discovered ship provides our first concrete evidence of exactly how she did it. The excavation of Cleopatra's ship began in earnest in January 2024. And from the first dive, the team knew they were dealing with something extraordinary. The vessel had settled remarkably intact into a pocket of clay on the harbor floor, protected from the organisms that typically consume ancient shipwrecks. Dr. Hassan assembled an international team of marine archaeologists, Egyptian antiquities experts, and specialists in ancient engineering. What emerged from their 3D scans was breathtaking. The ship was organized into distinct levels, each serving a different purpose. The lowest level contained ballast, water storage, and living quarters for crew and servants, at least 200 people based on space allocation. The middle level was where the discovery became truly remarkable. Here, the team found evidence of elaborate gardens. Yes, gardens on a ship. Soil samples revealed traces of plants carefully cultivated in raised beds, flowers, herbs, and even small fruit trees. The ancient historian Athenaeus had described such gardens on Cleopatra's barge. But modern scholars had dismissed this as impossible exaggeration. Yet here was physical evidence, complete with an ingenious irrigation system using lead pipes to distribute fresh water from massive cisterns. But it was the upper level that left the archaeological team speechless. This was Cleopatra's domain, a series of interconnected chambers that served as reception halls, dining rooms, private quarters, and an ancient throne room. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. Fragments of cedar wood from Lebanon, ebony from Nubia, and purple heart wood from distant lands suggested a vessel decorated with materials from across the known world. Among the most significant discoveries were the remains of the ship's decorative program. And here we began to understand Cleopatra's genius for political theater. The ship wasn't just luxurious. It was a carefully orchestrated statement of power, divinity, and legitimacy. Archaeologists recovered fragments of gilt rosettes, each crafted with remarkable precision. Analysis showed these represented the stars of the Egyptian night sky, specifically the constellation associated with Isis, the goddess with whom Cleopatra identified herself. Roman sources had mockingly referred to Cleopatra's claims of divine ancestry, but the ship revealed how seriously she took this role. Every element reinforced her position as the living embodiment of Isis, the divine mother, protector of Egypt, and goddess of magic and wisdom. But Cleopatra was too sophisticated to rely solely on Egyptian symbolism. The ship also incorporated Hellenistic elements, Greek columns, friezes depicting scenes from Homer's epics, and architectural details familiar to any educated Roman. This wasn't cultural confusion, it was brilliant diplomacy. The Ptolemaic dynasty were Greek rulers of an Egyptian kingdom, and Cleopatra, unlike her predecessors, had actually learned to speak Egyptian. She was presenting herself as a bridge between civilizations, a ruler who could command ancient Egyptian power while engaging with the Greek and Roman world as equals. The team also discovered an astronomical instrument in one of the upper chambers. After months of analysis, it became clear. This was an early form of armillary sphere, used to calculate celestial positions. Its presence suggested Cleopatra used the vessel not just for entertainment, but for scientific observation and consultation with astronomers and scholars. The ship's propulsion system provided another revelation about ancient engineering capabilities. While clearly designed to be towed by smaller boats for long journeys, it also possessed its own means of locomotion. Archaeologists found evidence of a rowing system unlike anything previously discovered from this period. The oars were housed in a complex arrangement that would have allowed 200 rowers to work in synchronized shifts, protected from the sun by the ship's overhanging upper decks. But more fascinating was the discovery of what appeared to be an early form of paddle wheel mechanism on the stern. While components had largely deteriorated, enough remained to reconstruct the basic design. It appeared to be operated by a treadmill system, where crew members would walk inside large wheels, turning gears that rotated paddle wheels on either side of the ship. This would have given the massive vessel surprising maneuverability in confined waters. Ancient sources had mentioned such devices, particularly in writings of the inventor Archimedes, but no physical evidence had ever been found. If this interpretation is correct, it suggests Cleopatra had access to the most advanced engineering knowledge of her time, and was willing to invest enormous resources to incorporate it into her personal vessel. Dr. Hassan's team consulted with naval engineers to determine if such a system would actually work. The verdict: not only was it feasible, but it would have been remarkably efficient for a vessel of this size. The discovery has forced scholars to revise their understanding of ancient mechanical knowledge. The gap between ancient and modern technology may be smaller than we thought, at least for those with sufficient wealth and vision to pursue innovation. H2H. Perhaps the most intimate glimpse into Cleopatra's world came from the personal quarters discovered on the ship's upper level. These rooms had been carefully sealed when the ship sank, creating a time capsule that preserved artifacts typically lost to time. In what was clearly Cleopatra's private chamber, archaeologists found remains of furniture that spoke to both luxury and intelligence. There was evidence of a bed constructed with a wooden frame and fabric suspension, an ancient form of mattress that would have been quite comfortable. But more telling was the discovery of storage compartments built into walls, containing what appeared to be scrolls and writing materials. Analysis of residue on wood fragments suggested these compartments had held papyrus documents. While the papyrus itself had long since deteriorated, the discovery confirmed something historians had long suspected. Cleopatra was a serious scholar who kept a working library even aboard her pleasure barge. Ancient sources tell us she was fluent in 9 languages and was the first Ptolemaic ruler in nearly 300 years to actually learn Egyptian. The presence of this library space suggests she used the ship as a floating study, combining leisure with intellectual pursuit. The team also recovered fragments of cosmetic containers, small vessels made of alabaster and glass that would have held perfumes, oils, and ointments. Chemical analysis of residue revealed sophisticated formulations combining ingredients from across the Mediterranean and beyond. There was frankincense from Arabia, myrrh from the Horn of Africa, and what appeared to be spikenard from the Himalayas. This wasn't just personal vanity. In the ancient world, control over such luxury goods was a demonstration of economic power and far-reaching trade networks. Every cent Cleopatra wore was a political statement. The ship's galley and storage areas revealed the extraordinary logistics required to maintain such a vessel. These weren't simple storage rooms, but sophisticated preservation systems designed to keep food fresh for extended periods. Archaeologists found evidence of multiple chambers maintained at different temperatures, an ancient form of refrigeration using evaporative cooling and possibly ice brought from mountain peaks. The food itself told stories. Analysis of residue in amphorae revealed that Cleopatra's ship carried wines from across the Mediterranean. Not just Egyptian beer, but Greek wines from Chios, Roman wines from Campania, and even wine from as far away as the Iberian Peninsula. Each region's wine had different properties and associations, and serving the right wine was part of sophisticated diplomatic entertainment. The team also found evidence of exotic foods. Fish bones suggested dining on species from across the eastern Mediterranean. There were remains of spices that would have been extraordinarily expensive. Black pepper from India, which in Cleopatra's time was worth its weight in silver. There were seeds from pomegranates, figs, and dates, but also from more exotic fruits that would have required careful transport. But perhaps most revealing were the cooking facilities themselves. The ship contained not 1, but 3 separate galley areas, each apparently dedicated to different culinary traditions. One showed evidence of Egyptian cooking methods, another Greek, and a third appeared set up for Roman-style cuisine. This wasn't just about feeding a diverse crew. It was about being able to entertain guests from different cultures with food prepared in their own traditions. Cleopatra understood that power operated on multiple levels, and the ability to provide perfect hospitality was itself a form of power. 1. of the most unexpected discoveries came from what appeared to be a medical bay on the ship. This area contained equipment and supplies, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of medicine, far beyond what we typically associate with the ancient world. There were surgical instruments, bronze scalpels, forceps, and probes, of a quality that wouldn't look out of place in a medieval hospital. Analysis of residue in various containers revealed traces of medicinal compounds. Some were familiar from ancient medical texts: willow bark extract for pain relief, which contains the same active ingredient as modern aspirin. Others were more surprising. One compound appeared to contain traces of what modern analysis identified as a primitive antibiotic, a fermented substance with properties that could have fought bacterial infections. This aligns with recent discoveries that ancient Egyptians and Nubians had some knowledge of antibiotic substances, though the mechanism wasn't understood in modern terms. The presence of this medical facility demonstrates several things about Cleopatra's reign. First, it shows the value placed on the health and well-being of those aboard, a practical necessity for maintaining such a complex vessel. Second, it shows access to the most advanced medical knowledge of the ancient world. Alexandria was home to the greatest medical library and research center in antiquity, and Cleopatra appears to have brought that expertise aboard her ship. But there's a third, more intriguing implication. Ancient sources tell us Cleopatra was deeply interested in poisons and their antidotes. The Roman historian Plutarch claims she tested various poisons on condemned prisoners to find one causing a painless death, research that would allegedly lead her to choose the asp for her own suicide. The medical bay, with its array of substances both healing and potentially harmful, provides our first physical evidence of this scientific interest. Dressed post concerns the idea of untimely death, and subsequent post-untimely death. Then press your intended singulars into the first physical evidence of a scientific interest. Its strong point is essential. The ship's entertainment facilities offered yet another window into how Cleopatra wielded soft power. One large chamber appeared designed as a performance space, a theater in miniature, where musicians, dancers, and actors could perform for the queen and her guests. The acoustics had been carefully considered. Walls showed evidence of decorative panels that would have also served to enhance and direct sound. Fragments of musical instruments were found in adjacent chambers. There were remains of lyres, flutes, and what appeared to be an early form of organ, a hydraulis, which used water pressure to force air through pipes. Ancient sources describe such instruments at wealthy entertainments, but physical evidence is extremely rare. The discovery of one aboard Cleopatra's ship suggests she spared no expense in creating a complete entertainment venue. But the theater wasn't just for passive entertainment. Evidence suggests it was also used for something more politically significant: ritual performances. The Ptolemaic rulers, including Cleopatra, maintained legitimacy partly through religious ceremonies, linking them to the divine. The ship's theater would have allowed Cleopatra to perform these rituals even while at sea, maintaining the religious obligations essential to her role as pharaoh. This was particularly important, given the hybrid nature of her rule. She needed to satisfy both Egyptian religious expectations and Greek cultural ones. The team also found evidence of what might be called an ancient museum or trophy room. This space contained pedestals and mounting points where valuable objects could be displayed. While the objects themselves were gone, the arrangement suggested a curated display, perhaps of gifts from foreign dignitaries, or artifacts from Egypt's long history. In the ancient world, the possession and display of such objects was a form of cultural capital, demonstrating both wealth and refinement. The discovery of Cleopatra's bath complex on the ship provided insights into both ancient engineering and the Queen's daily life. This wasn't a simple washing area, but an elaborate suite that would have rivaled the finest Roman baths. The system used a sophisticated arrangement of lead pipes to deliver both hot and cold water. Hot water was heated in bronze boilers, themselves an impressive feat of metalworking. And the temperature could apparently be controlled through a system of valves. The bath chamber itself showed evidence of elaborate decoration. Traces of mosaic work suggested that floors depicted marine scenes, dolphins, fish, and mythological sea creatures rendered in tiny colored tiles. The walls appeared to have been faced with marble or alabaster, materials that would have been both beautiful and practical, as they don't absorb moisture. But what made this facility truly remarkable was the discovery of what appeared to be a sauna or steam room. A separate chamber connected to the bath showed evidence of a heating system in the floor, an early form of hypocaust, the Roman underfloor heating system. But this predates widespread Roman use of such technology, suggesting that Cleopatra's engineers were innovators rather than imitators. The bathing complex also revealed something about Cleopatra's famous beauty regimens. The bath area contained traces of various substances used in ancient cosmetics and skin treatments. There was evidence of milk baths, dried residue that chemical analysis confirmed contained milk proteins. History tells us Cleopatra supposedly bathed in milk, and the presence of milk residue supports this tradition. Other containers held traces of honey, mineral salts, and various plant extracts. A sophisticated skincare routine that modern analysis suggests would have been genuinely effective. Among the most controversial discoveries aboard the ship was a chamber that appears to have served as an alchemical laboratory. This finding has ignited intense debate among scholars, as it pushes back the timeline of certain scientific practices by several centuries. The room contained remains of furnaces, distillation equipment, and vessels designed for chemical processes. Most significant were fragments of apparatus that appear to be early alembics, devices used for distillation. While alchemy as a systematic practice is usually dated to later periods, evidence from Cleopatra's ship suggests that proto-alchemical experimentation was already occurring in Ptolemaic Egypt. This actually makes historical sense. Alexandria was the intellectual capital of the ancient world, home to the famous library and museum, where scholars from across the Mediterranean gathered. The mixing of Egyptian practical chemistry, which included metallurgy, glassmaking, and production of cosmetics and medicines, with Greek philosophical approaches to understanding matter, could well have produced early alchemical thinking. Ancient sources tell us Cleopatra wrote treatises on cosmetics and medicine, and at least one Byzantine text attributes alchemical writings to her. Though scholars have generally dismissed these as pseudepigraphical, later works falsely attributed to a famous name. The discovery of this laboratory doesn't prove Cleopatra wrote those texts, but it does suggest she had access to and interest in chemical experimentation. The laboratory also contained something unexpected: fragments of glass vessels with unusual properties. Modern analysis revealed these were early forms of colored glass, produced through carefully controlled addition of metal oxides. Some pieces showed remarkable optical properties, acting almost like lenses. This suggests experimentation, not just with chemistry, but with optics, another field of study pursued in Alexandria. Whether Cleopatra personally engaged in these experiments or simply patronized scholars who did, the presence of this laboratory demonstrates her support for what we might call scientific research. /P. The navigation and control center of the ship revealed sophisticated understanding of maritime travel and astronomy. This chamber, located at a high point of the vessel for optimal visibility, contained the remains of instruments used for navigation. While many had deteriorated, enough remained to reconstruct their purposes. There were remnants of what appeared to be an advanced astrolabe, the navigational instrument that uses star positions to determine location and time. While astrolabes are well documented from later periods, finding one from Cleopatra's era was unexpected and suggests these devices developed earlier than previously thought. The team also found evidence of detailed charts and maps. While papyrus had long since dissolved, impressions in clay tablets and fragments of wooden map boards suggested the ship carried comprehensive navigational information. This makes sense, given Alexandria's position as a maritime hub. Ptolemaic Egypt controlled crucial trade routes, and accurate navigation was both economically and militarily vital. But the most fascinating aspect of this navigation center was its apparent dual purpose. In addition to practical navigation tools, the chamber contained astronomical instruments designed for observation rather than navigation. There were mounting points for what appeared to be early telescopic devices, tubes that could hold lenses or curved mirrors to magnify distant objects. While the lenses themselves were gone, the mounting apparatus, as some descriptive markings suggested, these were used for stargazing. This aligns with what we know about Ptolemaic intellectual culture. The dynasty prided itself on patronizing scientific inquiry, and astronomy was particularly valued because of its connections to both practical navigation and religious calendars. Cleopatra, as the most intellectually accomplished of the Ptolemaic rulers, would naturally have maintained this tradition. The presence of these instruments on her personal ship suggests astronomy wasn't just an academic interest, but something she engaged with personally. One of the most emotionally resonant discoveries was what appeared to be a nursery or children's quarters on the ship. This finding takes on special significance when we remember that Cleopatra had 4 children, Caesarion with Julius Caesar, and twins plus another son with Mark Antony. The nursery chamber was smaller than other main rooms, but showed signs of careful design for safety and comfort. The doorways had lower thresholds to prevent tripping, and there were built-in storage areas at child height. Most poignantly, archaeologists found toys. There were remnants of dolls made from wood and cloth, though fabric had mostly deteriorated. There were balls, carved animals, and what appeared to be an ancient rattle, a container with small pebbles inside that would have made noise when shaken. These simple objects, designed to delight a child over 2,000 years ago, create an unexpectedly intimate connection to Cleopatra as a mother, not just as a political figure. Ancient sources tell us Cleopatra was devoted to her children, particularly Caesarion, whom she designated as her co-ruler and attempted to position as Caesar's heir. The presence of this nursery suggests her children accompanied her on the ship, at least occasionally. This wasn't just a party barge for entertaining Roman generals. It was a functioning royal residence where the business of living, including child-rearing, took place. The team also found evidence of educational materials in the nursery area. There were fragments of what appeared to be children's writing exercises, letters carved into wax tablets. This aligns with what we know about royal education in the ancient world. Children of Ptolemaic rulers received extensive education from an early age, learning multiple languages and studying literature, mathematics, and philosophy. The ship apparently served as a schoolroom as well as a home, with tutors accompanying the royal family on their journeys. The military aspects of the ship have been somewhat overlooked in the fascination with its luxury features, but they're no less significant. While the Thalamagos was primarily a royal residence and entertainment venue, it was also designed with defense in mind. The ship's structure included reinforced sections that could withstand ramming, a crucial consideration in an era when naval warfare often involved ships deliberately colliding. The team found mounting points for what would have been boarding nets, defensive measures to prevent enemy soldiers from climbing aboard. More surprisingly, they found evidence of artillery emplacements. The ship appears to have carried at least 4 ballistas, large crossbow-like weapons capable of firing heavy bolts with enough force to penetrate ship hulls or defensive walls. These weren't just for show. Analysis of the mounting systems showed wear patterns consistent with actual use, suggesting the ship's weapons were regularly tested or perhaps even used in combat situations. This military capability reflects the reality of Cleopatra's political situation. For much of her reign, she was navigating dangerous waters, both literally and figuratively. Egypt was surrounded by rivals and potentially hostile powers. The ship needed to be able to defend itself or at least present enough of a threat to discourage attack. But the military features also reveal something about Cleopatra's approach to power. She didn't rely solely on Egypt's traditional military might. She supplemented it with Roman alliances. The design of some defensive features on the ship shows Roman influence, suggesting she employed Roman military engineers or adopted Roman techniques. This was typical of her strategy, combining Egyptian resources with foreign expertise to create something superior to either alone. The ship itself becomes a metaphor for her reign, projecting power through a combination of luxury, intelligence, and military capability, all carefully orchestrated to serve her political ends. The religious spaces aboard the ship provide crucial insights into how Cleopatra navigated the complex spiritual landscape of her realm. Egypt had thousands of years of religious tradition, while the Ptolemaic dynasty brought Greek religious practices, and Rome was now exerting cultural influence as well. The ship contained at least 3 distinct religious spaces, each dedicated to different divine traditions. The largest was clearly an Egyptian temple space, complete with an altar, offering tables and mounting points for divine statues. Chemical analysis of residue found on the altar revealed traces of incense, natron, the salt used in mummification and religious purification, and what appeared to be animal fat from sacrifices. This wasn't a symbolic gesture. Actual religious rituals following ancient Egyptian practices were performed aboard the ship. The presiding deity appears to have been Isis, with whom Cleopatra identified herself. Fragments of hieroglyphic inscriptions found in this space included the phrase Isis Cleopatra, reflecting the queen's claim to be the goddess's earthly incarnation. But there was also a space dedicated to Greek deities, particularly Dionysus, the god of wine, festivity, and theater, and coincidentally, the god with whom Mark Antony identified himself. This space had a different character, more focused on communal celebration than formal ritual. The architectural style was purely Greek, with evidence of marble columns and decorative friezes. A third religious space was smaller and more enigmatic. It appeared to be dedicated to syncretic worship, the blending of different religious traditions. Here, Greek and Egyptian deities were worshipped together, with Serapis, a god created by the Ptolemies to bridge Greek and Egyptian religion, appearing to hold a central place. This space embodies Cleopatra's political genius, her ability to present herself as a legitimate ruler within multiple cultural frameworks simultaneously. The ship's treasury and security systems revealed the enormous wealth at Cleopatra's disposal, and the measures taken to protect it. One heavily reinforced chamber contained remains of locked chests and storage systems designed to hold valuables. While looters had likely cleaned out anything precious centuries ago, the security measures themselves were instructive. The treasury chamber had only one entrance, accessed through a series of antechambers that would have made unauthorized entry nearly impossible. The door itself showed evidence of a sophisticated locking mechanism, not just a simple bolt, but a complex system that would have required multiple keys or perhaps a combination to open. Inside the treasury space, the team found mounting brackets and restraints designed to secure large objects. Based on size and spacing, these could have held massive quantities of gold and silver, precious stones, or valuable artifacts. Ancient sources tell us that Egypt was fabulously wealthy under the Ptolemies, controlling grain production that fed much of the Mediterranean and maintaining trade networks that stretched to India. Cleopatra had access to this enormous wealth, and the ship's treasury suggests she carried significant portions of it with her. Why would she need so much wealth on a ship? The answer lies in the nature of ancient politics. Political alliances were often sealed with gifts, and the more valuable the gift, the more serious the alliance. When Cleopatra met with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony, she needed to demonstrate Egypt's wealth immediately and tangibly. Being able to produce astonishing gifts at a moment's notice was a form of power in itself. The ship's treasury also contained something unexpected, a workshop for craftsmen. This area had tools for metalworking, gem cutting, and jewelry making. It appears that Cleopatra employed artisans aboard the ship who could create custom gifts and decorative items. The crew quarters and servant areas of the ship tell a different story. One of the hundreds of people whose labor made Cleopatra's luxury possible. These spaces were cramped, functional, and starkly different from the opulent upper decks. The crew quarters were organized with military-style efficiency. Hammocks or sleeping platforms were arranged in tight rows, with minimal personal space. This wasn't cruelty, but practicality. The ship required a large crew, and space was at a premium. Yet even in these modest quarters, there were signs of reasonable care for crew welfare. The spaces were designed with ventilation in mind, crucial for health in cramped conditions. There were separate areas for different types of workers: rowers, sailors, household servants, craftsmen, and guards. Each had their own sections. This organization would have helped maintain order and efficiency on what was essentially a floating city. One of the more interesting discoveries was evidence of a hierarchical system among the crew. Officers or senior servants had slightly larger spaces with better amenities. There were areas that appeared to be for meals, though nothing like the elaborate dining facilities on the upper decks. The food remains found in crew areas were simpler than those from royal quarters, but still nutritious and varied. The crew ate well by ancient standards: bread, beer, fish, vegetables, and occasional meat. This makes sense. Maintaining a ship of this complexity required skilled, healthy workers. You couldn't afford to have your crew weakened by poor nutrition. The team also found evidence of an infirmary space for crew members, separate from the medical bay that served the royal family and guests. This suggests a degree of care for worker welfare that wasn't universal in the ancient world. The crew quarters also revealed something about the diversity of Cleopatra's Egypt. Personal items found in these areas included amulets and religious objects from various traditions: Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and even more distant cultures, suggesting an international crew drawn from across the Mediterranean. Lee. The ship's communication systems revealed sophisticated methods for coordinating activities across the massive vessel. The team found evidence of what appeared to be an internal signaling system. There were bell mountings at various points throughout the ship, connected by a system of ropes and pulleys that would have allowed signals to be transmitted quickly from one area to another. This wasn't just for emergencies. It would have been essential for coordinating the hundreds of crew members required to operate the ship. The team also discovered speaking tubes built into the walls in several areas. These hollow pipes, typically made of bronze or lead, created acoustic channels that allowed voice communication between different parts of the ship. Similar systems were used in later European castles and ships, but finding them on a vessel from the 1st century BCE was unexpected. These communication systems point to the logistical complexity of maintaining the Thalamagos. This wasn't a simple sailing vessel, but a mobile palace requiring constant coordination. Meals needed to be prepared and served at specific times. The ship needed to be maintained and cleaned. Entertainment had to be arranged. Religious rituals had to be performed. Guards needed to be coordinated. All of this required efficient communication. But the most intriguing aspect of the communication system was what appeared to be a message center, a room dedicated to receiving, storing, and sending written communications. This space contained cubbyholes for sorting messages, work tables where scribes could write, and evidence of a seal system for ensuring message authenticity. In the ancient world, written communication was crucial for governing. Cleopatra ruled a large kingdom and maintained diplomatic relations with powers across the Mediterranean. She couldn't afford to be out of touch just because she was on her ship. The message center suggests that the ship was regularly visited by courier boats, bringing updates from across Egypt and beyond. As the excavation drew toward completion, the team made one final discovery that would prove most controversial and mysterious. In a sealed chamber, deep within the ship's structure, they found what appeared to be a time capsule, a deliberately preserved collection of objects that seemed intended to communicate something to the future. The chamber had been carefully sealed with a distinctive mix of resins and wax, creating a waterproof barrier that had protected its contents remarkably well. Inside were several items that seemed carefully chosen. There was a scroll, miraculously preserved by the sealed environment. When carefully unrolled using modern conservation techniques, it revealed text in Greek, Cleopatra's own handwriting, based on comparison with authenticated samples. The scroll's contents were electrifying. It appeared to be a personal reflection written by Cleopatra herself, discussing her reign, her relationships with Caesar and Antony, and her fears for Egypt's future under Roman domination. The text has not been fully released to the public, as scholars continue to authenticate and analyze it. But leaked portions suggest a woman far more politically sophisticated and self-aware than Roman propaganda portrayed. She wasn't a seductress who enchanted powerful men. She was a strategist who understood that Egypt's independence depended on carefully managed relationships with Rome's leadership. Also in the chamber was a sealed jar containing liquid that analysis revealed to be an example of the finest perfume, still fragrant after 2 millennia. Chemical analysis showed it was an incredibly complex formulation, containing dozens of ingredients from across the known world. This might have been Cleopatra's personal scent, the olfactory signature of a legend. There was also jewelry, a pair of gold earrings shaped like serpents, clearly symbolic of the asp that according to legend caused Cleopatra's death. Today, as conservation work continues on artifacts from Cleopatra's ship, we're forced to reconsider everything we thought we knew about the last pharaoh of Egypt. For 2,000 years, Her story has been told primarily by her enemies, Roman historians who had every reason to diminish her accomplishments and paint her as an exotic temptress rather than a capable ruler. The discovery of the Thalamagos gives us Cleopatra's own voice, expressed not in words, but in choices. Choices about how to project power, how to maintain cultural identity while engaging with other civilizations, how to use wealth strategically, and how to support innovation and learning. The ship reveals a woman of extraordinary intelligence and sophistication. She understood that power in the ancient world operated on multiple levels. Military might mattered, certainly, but so did cultural sophistication, religious legitimacy, economic strength, and intellectual credibility. Every aspect of her ship was designed to demonstrate these different forms of power simultaneously. What makes this discovery so significant isn't just that it confirms Cleopatra was wealthy. We already knew that. It's that it shows us how she thought, how she planned, how she presented herself to the world. The Thalamagos was more than a pleasure barge. It was a statement of purpose, a floating embassy, a mobile palace, a research facility, and a home. It was Cleopatra's masterpiece, a physical embodiment of her vision for what Egypt could be, a bridge between ancient and modern, between East and West, between tradition and innovation. In the end, she failed. Egypt became a Roman province. Her children were killed or disappeared into obscurity, and history remembered her largely as Romans chose to portray her. But this ship, buried in the harbor of Alexandria for 2,000 years, waited patiently to tell a different story. The story of a brilliant, sophisticated ruler who almost changed the course of history.